2025. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily Good Life Meditation, a daily live video exercise that I do to remember my life objectives and principles, those which are outlined in my book, Going Alone. I also use this time to think about the last 24 hours and how I did with any noteworthy challenges or opportunities that I met. I go over my creed and I plan for the coming day. But first, a welcome and greeting to new subscribers to the channel. I'm glad you're here. Also, a bit of a disclaimer, I do talk about sensitive subjects in this video, typically death, my own death, reliably every day. That's been proven to make people feel uncomfortable, so just a heads up. This is a journal, so I have latitude to talk about any subject that I want. I do read all of the comments, and I do respond, but I wait until I'm done before I do that. And lastly, a huge thank you to my YouTube, the people who watch my videos on YouTube, and especially my YouTube members and my Patreon supporters. I really appreciate your support. With that said, let's get started. According to my notes yesterday, going over the last 24 hours, I have just one note, free floating, and then in parentheses, car and reel. If you've been following these videos in the last couple of days, you'll know that I've latched on to the idea of floating. I'm relatively newly retired, less than a year, 8 months in, going on 9 months now. And it's been a journey. And I think I've come out the other side, finally. It took a long time of trying out new things. Pardon me. Just a second. Thank you. Trying out new things, going backwards, going back to a life that I once knew, mainly work, failing at that, and then finally discovering myself one day simply by virtue of the fact that I had nowhere else to go, floating. It's a lot like, realizing there's nowhere on the high dive to go but to jump. Nothing to distract with, nothing I can fiddle with anymore. Can't sit on the edge, just have to jump. And it turns out that the plunge wasn't as bad as it was. Scarier. It looked more frightening than it actually was. Once over the edge and floating, the experience is quite pleasant indeed. So what I'm referring to in this note was free floating, car and reel. In the afternoon, my mornings are very structured, so I pretty much have a set morning until after lunch. Usually we're free from lunch about 1 to 1:30, sometimes 2 o'clock, because we take care of my father-in-law's lunch every day. After lunch, I suggested to Yumiko that we continue our enjoyment of the ocean and the beach while the season lasts, and we went to a nearby beach to just go swimming. The wind was blowing a little bit. It was a little bit choppy, and Yumiko, my wife, elected to stay on the shore while I went in for a swim. And the floating was quite nice. And of course, the experience was rife with analogy, imagining the actual floating imagery and etc. And I did indeed swim out a ways and turn on my back and float with my face to the sky with my eyes closed, ears below the surface, hearing the clicking sounds of fish. And I thought about floating, and I thought about the journey. It was good. But I also noticed that in a practical sense, remember in the parentheses it says car and reel. In a very practical sense, I felt like I was floating just in my day as well. A couple of things are different. One, and this has been gradually happening in the last 9 months, I'm a lot quieter now. I don't talk as much as I used to, especially since I began to float. I can go long periods of time in silence, which works just fine with my wife. Japanese people are very comfortable with silence as a species, as a nation, as a people. Americans less so. So for a long time in our long marriage, it's been a bit of a an interesting thing where I always fill the vacuum of space with my voice, and Yumiko listens or pretends to listen, because sometimes she knows that I'm not really saying anything, but I'm just, easing my own discomfort with quiet by hearing myself talk. But that necessity has seemed to lessen over the last 9 months. It really happened after starting retirement, and especially after coming to Japan. I began to speak less, but really has happened now in the last week. Also, this has, in driving, and then again, I'm pointing out the driving part because it really came to an obvious point in driving yesterday. I notice while I'm driving, when I'm not talking, and I don't drink coffee. I like to have a coffee, stop at a convenience store and get a coffee, and but I don't, partially to help me to be a better driver, because I'm not a very good driver anymore. I don't allow myself to sip coffee when I'm driving. At a stoplight, that's okay, I'll take a sip and put it back, and the green light goes and off I go. The combination of not distracting myself with coffee, making sure that I'm listening to Japanese radio, which the fact of the Japanese radio reminds me, what are the options? Well, the options are I could be streaming my own, playlist or something like that, but I don't do that. I want to hear the Japanese radio to remind me I'm in a foreign land, that things are different, people drive on the other side of the road, etc., etc. And then not talking. And then, of course, utilizing objective number 7 in my creed, which is to do just one thing at a time and do that thing slowly, deliberately, and carefully, has all contributed to a greater sense of floating and a greater sense of peace. It's interesting how these things are coming together. There's a giant hornet right there, right above the camera, and it just flew off. And the birds are out in force right now. Wow. Okay, enough of that. Let's go over my 8 objectives of my creed. They are: number 1, to be always ready to die, to make good and effective use of time, to develop and maintain good and sound life principles, to cultivate good emotional reactions, to perform good actions relative to my values, to do just one thing at a time, to recognize my true limits and true opportunities, to do just one thing at a time and do that thing slowly and deliberately and carefully, and to keep my balance. And the one principle that I'll read today shall be, what did I read yesterday? Family. I read the principle of family yesterday. So today I'm going to read public speaking. Public speaking is principle number 13, page 259 in the hardbound edition. The principle of public speaking. Sub-principles: best words, prudence, felicity, eloquence, literature, rumor, and gossip. Rumor and gossip are 1. And a quote from the Bible, no less. Psalm 50:23. To him that ordereth his conversation aright, will I show the salvation of God. Here we go. Public speaking. Speak and communicate always as though any person being spoken of is standing directly before us and attentive to our every word. In this way, we shall not gossip or pass idle time at the expense of another. Use few words and just the right words to cautiously convey our meaning in alignment with our thoughts and emotion. Avoid verbal flourish unnecessary to our intent, or the adornment of our ideas with words irrelevant to our more Spartan meaning. Read great writing for the benefit of example and precedent, and never spread stories or trade in the misfortune or folly of others. All right, as for today, I'm going to do my normal morning routines, which pretty much take me to the afternoon. I'm going to also ship a package that I started to prepare. I mentioned yesterday that I was going to be shipping a package to the person that had done the art for my avatar that I use on the internet. I couldn't finish the packages. I wanted to go out and buy one more thing for them to add to the box. And I went out and got that in the afternoon yesterday. So the box is ready to go. I'll ship that this afternoon. And with that, I'm pretty much done. Let's go ahead and read comments. Etiquette. Hello, Etiquette. Good morning. Good morning to you. Hello, Julie. Good afternoon to you. Ray says 26C and 87% in Okayama. Yesterday was rough. 42 at the house and doing yard work. Wow. 26C and 87 for you. It's 25 and 85. 85 here. 25 and 85% humidity here. So not too much difference. Yeah, it was definitely hot yesterday for sure. Be careful doing that yard work. Etiquette, Mr. Kurt, those wind chimes are cool, aren't they? Isn't that nice? The paper blew away, this paper bit, and I lost it in the yard. I found it later, so I cut a piece of old kimono fabric that I bought to replace it. It works pretty nice. Tim, hi Tim, good morning. Weather check here in the UK at 9:40 p.m., 13.1 C and 89% humidity, heavy showery day. No run for you, and the plants are taking care of themselves, huh? So what are you going to do today, Tim? Or the day's already out. It's time for you to go to bed, huh? I hope you had a good one. Annika says, good to see them in your balcony. Thank you. I'm thinking about getting another one, a ceramic one. This one is made of metal. I'm thinking about getting a little glass wind chime. It has kind of a different kind of a tinkle sound. Tim says, I found the longer I go into retirement and finding an inner peace, that the air of quietness or wanting to be quiet and less talkative has followed one another and has become more common. Ah, I really appreciate that. You are my senpai, Tim, the one who has gone before. And I'm getting reconnect. You're on point, and you're calling back from the front about what you see, right? That point, that sounds scary because that's like war. So you're the lead guy on the trail, calling ahead to say there's waterfalls ahead. So this quietude is part and parcel of the experience, huh? Interesting. Julie says, my support group has a strict rule that you must obtain their permission before you can tell anyone about their story. Oh, okay, that makes sense, right? I mean, if they're, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. To avoid gossip. Oh, I see. You're referring to the principle I read there about gossip. Yeah, yeah. Ah, I see what you're saying. That's a pretty great rule. I like that, rather than someone just interjecting and saying, "Oh, you got to hear about what happened to Frank, right?" Well, make sure you clear it with Frank before you do that to avoid gossip. It sounds like Julie, your group. I don't know what kind of group it is, but whatever group it is, that sounds like a group I'd want to be a part of. Right? I mean, if they have considerate rules like that. That's nice. Tim says, unsure if that's a good or a bad thing, but I can understand why, when getting older, you could become more isolated in feeling. Yeah, that's interesting, Tim. I find that I'm more comfortable with the peace. I mean, I can't speak to anybody other than myself. I'm more comfortable with the quiet. Plus, I kind of sometimes rehearse in my mind the thing I want to say, and I realize, that's not worth saying. Especially being married to someone who's just fine with quiet. I think she appreciates it. So, hey Taylor, hi there. Kurt, hi Kurt. Kurt, what is the thing that you miss the most from the U.S. now that you live in Japan? Pardon me, I've got the frog in my throat again. Just a second. Okay, so A. Taylor, the thing that I miss most is maybe not something that you're asking for. Maybe you're looking for some food or some activity or some circumstance. It is a circumstance. I miss being an American among Americans, and all that entails. Being one of the club, right? Here, I'm not one of the club. I'm always an outsider, and I knew that coming back. It's no surprise, and I chose that. I accepted that coming back. But I had the last, 11 years in America. It was fun being among my people. So I miss that, but not so much that I want it back. And as we get a little more mature in this retirement situation, Yumiko and I um, might be able to find ourselves in a position where we can kind of live between the two countries. Julie says, this is interesting. I actually find myself much more talkative in retirement. Oh, do you? How interesting. See, I guess it cuts both ways, huh? Tim says, hi, Kurt. And Tim saying hi to Robert is saying hi to everybody. And his weather check is in Napanee, Ontario is 26C, 36 humidity, and AGI of 20. I think the AGI was 16 or 19 yesterday, so the air quality is a little less, huh? Julie says, my favorite rule is that you don't give advice unless you're asked by the other person. That's another great rule. I love that. 14B, hello 14B. I don't think I've seen your name here before. Welcome. What do you make of hindsight now that you're older and in retirement? Do you see things with rose-colored glasses? Do you think that human beings are realists in hindsight? I think so. I've never been, maybe it's just me, I've never been one, I don't think, to look at things, well, let me say it this way. I've always strove to see things as they are to the best of my ability. And I think I can see things more clearly now in retirement without the distraction of the busyness and the stress that was like a lot of listening to a lot of loud banging on cans all around me. And now that all that peace, now that quiet has arrived, I think I can look backwards, forwards, and at the present with more clarity now than ever before in my life. 14B. I hope that answers your question. Sapporo J. Hello, Sapporo J. Good morning, Kurt. Always wondered if that brown door behind you has a design on it. Can only see just the top of it, just weathering this. It does. It doesn't have a design. I'll show you what it is. The person who lived here before, this is a sliding unit that slides across here for hurricanes, typhoons. When the typhoons come, you see this one and that one, we've got these things we can slide in. The whole house has it. We can basically wall ourselves in against the big storm. See, this thing slides. If I can pull it out just a little bit. See how that slides out? There's two of them, and they'll cover the whole thing. And whoever lived here before, and I know who it was, the owner, that woman that sold us the house, she left her mark in two places. She left the Virgin of Guadalupe that she had painted on the door, so I think she was Catholic, clearly. And then she had been sitting here, I think she had a chair here too, and with her finger, she had left marks on here, and she wrote some Japanese too. There's an upside down smiley face right there. There's something there, and then you can see she wrote a lot with her hand. I think that's a day, and then that's the character for ha. I don't know if maybe I bring Yumiko out here, she could pick out some words. So clearly the girl that lived here, that became the woman who sold us the house, this was her room, and her brother's room was over there. And she put a lot of busy work on there. You thought they were a plant design. No, I think it was the girl who lived in the room, sitting out here, maybe on the phone with her friends, making marks as sometimes kids will do. Yeah. Thanks for asking. I had really never thought to share that with anybody. Robert says hi to 14B and Sapporo J. Tim says, same here on the peace and quiet, but I can understand for some perhaps on their own in life it could be an aid to loneliness. But I'm a lot more at peace now in retirement and love it. Good point. Yeah, I mean, if you were always on your own, then this could deepen that sense, right? Right, Tim? It's everything is fraught, right? I mean, every direction, every step is we can slip or we can be elevated. We can slip and fall or become elevated with every step now. I'm noticing that duality at every day in this phase of life. I was talking to my brother yesterday on the phone. He's 3.5 months away from retirement, and kind of like what you were saying, Julie. I don't want to offer unsolicited advice, but he was calling me to talk about retirement, and but I mean, he's like, it's like wow. My brother's name is Wow. It's every step is like you'll either, it's like walking on slippery stones by the water's edge, right? Every step you could either make a step further or fall right on your ass in the water. Hello, Francisco. Robert says hi to Francisco. Tim says appreciating the rain for the garden as using means water in the very dry weather costs a lot on a water meter. I understand, yeah. All those marks I thought were a plant design, Sapporo, J adds. 14b says, in hindsight, I think in particular about how people remember the 80s fondly, but they don't remember all the problems. Yeah, I see those memes on Facebook. The generation. I'm a baby boomer. I'm the last of the baby boomers, but a lot of my contemporaries are Gen Xers, looking fondly at the 80s. And I lived through those periods, and it was everything. You see those memes, right? I mean, it was all that stuff. I definitely remember that, but it was also not. I mean, it's just like the Stones I was talking about, right? I mean, the 80s were full of problems that are lessened now. Some are heightened now. Life goes on, right? You know, it's like what is it? They found that inscription on the ancient Greek wall from like the 2nd century BC. Someone had written some graffiti on the wall in ancient Greece saying basically translating as "kids today." Never ends. As just one example, 14b, yeah, that's a good example. Sapporo J says, oh, and Sapporo is 23.8 degrees and 92% humidity. So you are only a little bit cooler than me. I'm 25 degrees here in Shizuoka, Sapporo, and 83% humidity. What's going on with Hokkaido these days? What are you guys doing up there? Did someone forget to adjust the thermostat? 14b says, it's been very important for my mental health, and I believe the integrity of my brain as well, to keep stories straight. I think dementia is caused by lies, denial. Oh, I don't remember the 80s fondly, Julie adds. Well, now that you've said it, Julie, I will chime in and join you in that. I was not a fan. I mean, it was everything that those people. You see those memes, those AI generated memes, right? Of the two kids on the bicycle at sunset, on their 80s bicycles, saying, "Hey, welcome. It's the 80s, Colin. We're here in 2025. You guys don't get out anymore." And they show those idyllic scenes, and like Julie, I go, yeah, every one of those, I remember that, but I wasn't a fan. I mean, I wouldn't want to go back to the 80s or the. I mean, there was great stuff. I remember the 70s, right? I mean, it was great. I mean, I remember the music in the 70s, 80s, but were great in their way. But I wouldn't go back to any of them. I want to be right here, right now. This is where I want to be. Francisco says, "Did you ever thought about retirement in your 50s? How did you perceive it back then? Is it what you experience now?" No, I didn't. I started thinking about retirement. I didn't really, I never planned for retirement other than every job I ever had. I said yes to the retirement plan. I told the HR person, max out, everything that I'm doing, put every mutual fund at the most aggressive, and forget about it, because I knew that if I started a new job and the first paycheck came in, sans all of that stuff, that I would just adjust to whatever the paycheck was, and that someday my future self might thank my younger self. That's the extent of retirement planning. I never planned, and then I kept all the paperwork for all the jobs that I had, which is really important because a lot of people lose track of that, right? And you have a job in your mid-30s, and then you move through your career, and you're 7, 8, 10 jobs later when you get to your 60s, and you don't remember what the pension plan, or not the pension plan, but the 401k was, where you put your money in at your 30s. This happens a lot. So I kept all the paperwork, and I was very aggressive about setting up my allocations. which paid huge dividends. That's what allowed me to retire now. So to answer your question, I didn't really think about retirement until about age 56, 57, when one day I simply, remember I told you I kept all that paperwork in a file, and I carried that paperwork with me my entire career. One day I had a really bad day at work, and this isn't the day that Tim and Julie and others are familiar with, that actually the day that I pulled the trigger. It's not that day. It was just it was a less bad day. And one day I said, you know what? I had the day off from work, and I said, I'm gonna get off that piece of paper, and I'm gonna call up all of these retirement funds that I've been tracking for 30 years, and see how much money I've got. That took a morning, and by the end of the morning, I realized I was in a position where I could retire, and that's when I started to think about it. That was about 3 or 4 years ago, when I went over to my wife and I said, guess what? We get to retire. I hadn't planned on it. I wasn't conspiring towards it. It just happened as a result of a lucky inclination that I had throughout my career. Something inside me was telling me that I should max out every retirement fund that I have, and that paid off. Sorry if that's more than you actually wanted to know, but that's how it all went down. 14B goes on, Fall River, MA. Isn't that Massachusetts? Or is that Maine? Or is that Michigan? I don't know. It's 75 degrees and 60% humidity. Oh, that's very nice. Very nice indeed. Tim says, I guess you will become a retirement senpai for your brother as you progress ahead of him. Tim, maybe. Well, I'm gonna plead Julie's point, right, and not talk about other people without their permission. So we'll see. So thank you for adding that, Julie. You helped me to remind myself not to gossip. All right, and Tim says, and there goes a nasty. Speaking of gossip, there goes a nasty email from my mom just flew past. You can see it coming down on the screen. Okay, I'm not gonna gossip. Okay, Tim says 60 was going to be my retirement age, but suddenly 58. I thought, nope, I had enough. The decision came suddenly and very quickly. LOL, Tim. It was 58 from, it's funny, Tim, you and I are the similarity. It came for me at 58 too. I had to, but I needed to wait a year before I actually did it. So at the end of 59, I think it was, or something, or maybe I was already 60. Francisco Zanetti says, thanks for the retirement days as you imagined while working. I didn't imagine. I didn't know what I was getting into. All I was dreaming about, and this is going to sound like hyperbole, Francisco, but it's not. The last 5 years of work I've never been in war. I've never been a soldier, so I can't imagine. But I just, in my imagining of what it would be like to be in war in a foxhole under fire. That's what the last 5 years of work were like for me. It was really terrible. My only dream in retirement was escape. I didn't know what I didn't. It's like a man in a foxhole with bombs going off. He's not thinking about whether they're going to have hot coffee in the trenches if he can escape back to the trenches. All he's thinking about is getting out of the freaking damn trench. That's all I thought about. I didn't know what I was heading into. And it was very hard. I'm closing in on between 8 and 9 months in, and it's been a very hard journey. But I think I've arrived at what I'm calling the floating part now. And it's wonderful, Francisco Zanetti. So I've discovered a place now that seems to be truly amazing. And I'm getting notes from people, like my friends here, like Tim and Julie and Robert and Evelyn, who are telling me that this is kind of what it's like. I've had others tell me the same. 14B says that's Massachusetts. Oh, okay, thank you. One of the M's I didn't say. You'd think I would know that. I worked in Massachusetts for a while. And then there's the proper abbreviations for Maine and Michigan. I think you're right. Julie BB says, apologies for my error. Julie BB says, I find my siblings to be the hardest to advise. Yeah, I found myself biting my tongue yesterday, talking to my brother about some of the things he's doing. I'm like, Okayama Ray says, my retirement planning started at 17 when deciding to do 20 in the military. LOL. 20 years, I guess you mean, right? Outside of that, though, there hasn't been much aside from a second career. Is that because you're eligible for a military retirement at 20 years of service? I'm extrapolating from what I think you're saying there. Boy, I can tell you this, just, well, no, I'm not going to give, I'm not going to give any retirement advice to anybody. First, no one's asking. Second, I'm not a good person to advise. I'll go no further than to say, max out every option you can. Whiskey, hey Whiskey, good to see you. I heard Yomuji is a great probiotic. Okay, thanks for the advice. Francisco Zanetti says, what was hard in your last days of work? The environment change or you changed? A little of both. I wound up with a manager, not my boss, but my boss's boss, who was absolutely, well, I shouldn't couch them as awful. I should say that they were awful. A more politically correct me would say that I didn't work well with them, but they were awful. And everyone around them, that person drove a lot of people to, if not retirement, to thoughts of retirement or finding new jobs. And so it was a manager that I couldn't work with, that made things awful. Robert says, hi, Whiskey. Whiskey says, how's the beer in Shizuoka? Well, it's no different, I don't think, from the beer in, well, no, I shouldn't say that. I don't drink much at all anymore. I've had a single can of beer in my refrigerator downstairs for a month that I've been eyeballing, but every night I look at it at dinner time, I go, You know why? And Tim, others might relate, I don't know. It's like, I think I was drinking before as a way of dulling the pain of my life. And I would come home after a hard day of work and I would have a beer to numb things up a little bit. I don't feel pain anymore. Life isn't painful or hard, other than the sore I feel in my foot sometimes, pain in my side once in a while, And I would rather, the cost of the beer in terms of the well-being the next day, if I have a single beer in the evening, I don't feel as good the next day. I'm like, do I want to trade having a beer right now, I'm talking about at dinner time, and then not feel as good in the next morning? There's no pain to numb anymore, so I don't really drink it anymore. I know that's beyond the scope of your question, Whiskey, but I'll tell you this. When I do drink, I'm an Asahi man, and Asahi, of course, is a national, global brand from Japan. But there is a brewery here called West Coast Brewery. I walked right past it yesterday. It's in the community of Mochimune, where Yumiko and I went swimming yesterday. They're actually very famous now. But I'm not a craft brew kind of guy. I've had their beer. I'm not a fan, so I'm an Asahi man. Tim says, certainly the same with my brother. However, he's 10 years older than me. Really? Is he retired? My brother's 19 months younger than me. And I'm not gonna brag. I'm not gonna brag. The brag isn't a word. I'm not gonna gossip about him. I'm just gonna say that his circumstance is at once amazingly better than mine for retirement and amazingly more challenging for retirement. He's got a double extreme. I will gossip a little bit. I will go and go so far as to say that my brother is blessed because he has the type of a dream retirement that in terms of actual money that few can possibly imagine. He's so well set, but he's challenged in that he still has school-age children. You can see I need to say no more, right? Whiskey says, hello, believe in yourself. That's nice that Whiskey's saying hi to Robert, aka believe in yourself. Yeah, pension and VA. Oh, okay, I see. Pension and Veterans Administration. Yeah, I knew a guy when I was in the when I was working in America. He and his wife both did full military service. Then they did full government service, and the two of them are retiring with three income sources apiece: military pension, government pension being government service pension, and Social Security. 6 pension incomes between the two of them. I mean, and now he he and his wife literally, when they got married and they're like just after college, they said, okay, let's plan this whole thing out. Let's figure out how we can do this so that we can retire. They retired at like 62, and let's figure out how we can retire. And they engineered the whole thing. It means you can do that. So I didn't know you could do that. You could figure it all out. 14b says, why do you think you've had a more successful marriage than almost anyone who gets married? Oh, I think that's real. I can give you two answers to that. The first answer is that I'll give you the simple one and then the more important one. The simple one is the fact that because Yumiko and I are from different cultures and we don't share a common language, we don't assume very much about one another, and we take great aims for clarity and alignment of our communication. So being from separate cultures can be a hard part for many couples, but for us it turned out to be a real helpful thing because, for one, when we have problems, when Yumiko and I have problems, we assume it's a cultural communication problem, and we approach the resolution of the problem from that assumption, which isn't assuming that the other person's an asshole, right? Or that the other person's stupid or wrong or anything. We say, oh, we must have a misunderstanding of some sort. Let's sit down and resolve it. And we have a long tradition of literally making time to sit down and work out the problems. That's the simple reason that we've had a successful marriage. I mean, a largely successful marriage. I mean, our marriage has problems like any marriage, but the more important reason that we've had a successful marriage is that our values are very deeply aligned. And that makes a big difference. There's pretty much nothing that I would do. There's nothing that I would do that my wife would think I was doing a bad thing, and vice versa, right? I mean, there's stuff that I do that she thinks I'm an idiot for doing, and that I'm a fool or I'm being juvenile in some way. But there's nothing that I'm doing that she would go, oh my gosh, Kurt turned out to be a bad man after all. And likewise, there's nothing that she would do in 38 years of being together has illustrated that. So that's the more important one. Deeply, deeply aligned values, coupled with, strong efforts towards communication. Marmighty, hi Marmighty, good morning to you. Robert says hi to Okayama and Marmighty. Robert says, a song memory, Working Man by Rush. Yeah, very good song by my favorite band. Whiskey says, Baird Beer too. Never heard of it. Sounds interesting. I'd certainly try it. Cheers. Cheers, mate. And Tim says, my brother retired some years ago, but unfortunately we rarely keep in touch. Yeah, my brother and I too. We have a lot in common, but we are in completely opposite ends of the spectrum in all the stuff that is sensitive. Religion, politics, social norms. I mean, Lyle and I have the same core values, but we are like, we literally couldn't be any more different. And coming together, and we're friendly, and we have a lot of shared memories because we were close when we were growing up. But coming together is a little, sometimes, not that we're hostile at all, but it's a little like, how North Korea and South Korea have that building that separates the two, and you can come in there and have the meetings. It's like, representatives from the two Korean fronts coming together to sit across the table, and you got the guards over there peeking around the corner, right? Because I was talking to him yesterday we were talking about, he asked about my business, and I mentioned about, there's a hornet. Mentioned about the tariffs, and I got to watch on careful territory because we're very different political spectrums, and you could see the two of us kind of navigating the politics of the tariffs, and we moved on. Let's talk about something else. Okay, there you go. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I really appreciate it. I wish you all the best. Be safe, but not too safe. See you tomorrow, maybe. Have a good day. And Evelyn, if you see this, Evelyn, hope you landed safely, and wherever your destination is, and have a great adventure where you are. Take care, Evelyn. Bye bye.